In this next session, what I like to talk about is the phone call itself. I've given you some samples to listen to, and maybe you'll get a sense of the flow, which is for the most part, you're dialing, you're waiting. A secretary gets on the phone, you ask them, can you tell me who I speak to regarding your employee benefits decisions? And pretty much for most calls, it'll be something to the effect of no or yes, that's Bob, but he's not in. Most calls, that's what's going to happen. And so you have to understand that don't be frustrated by that when you sit down and make a bunch of phone calls. The biggest issue or the biggest problem or obstacle is actually reaching the person that you're trying to reach. This is why we gather data. This is why we get information so that the information or the data will help us to make better calls. So instead of making 10 calls and talking to one decision maker, you make 10 calls and you talk to 5 or 6. If you can train yourself and learn how to do that, that'll change everything. And so the way we do that is we gather data. The other thing is we use that data to help us in the future and to help us to be able to communicate with the person on the phone. So what are our goals? Understand the why. Why are you making a phone call? What's the point? Are you trying to sell something over the phone? No, not at all. So you're not trying to sell anything. So what is it that you're trying to accomplish? The A1 goal is to accomplish setting up an appointment, setting up a DM, short for decision maker, a decision maker 15-minute appointment. That's our goal. That's why we don't give a lot of information over the phone. It's not because we're ashamed of Colonial. It's not because we don't know our products. It's not because we don't even want to necessarily get into that conversation. It's because we're not going to have a good conversation about what we do over the phone. It's just not going to happen. And so we want to make sure that we get in person, that we get their undivided attention that we've earned, that we've asked for. And if we can get 15 minutes, that would be fantastic. And then once we're there, if they want us to stay longer and to explain more, then that would be great. And so when we make our phone calls, our goal is setting the DM, not selling. So what kind of information are we trying to gather? Well, the most important piece of the puzzle is figuring out who is the person that makes those benefits decisions for company X, Y, and Z. Now, the biggest problem we face today, and we've seen a shift in business, is there are more and more businesses that are going more to a collaborative model, which means you don't have one decision maker who makes all the decisions. A lot of companies and organizations now, you're going to speak to, let's say, an HR director. That HR director might go and talk to the executive vice president, and then the executive vice president wants to get approval from the owner. Or maybe you have to talk to a panel or a group. And so it's not as easy as one may think. And honestly, we're just trying to get our foot in the door. So it's not a bad thing if you have the first appointment and it's not really with the person who's ultimately going to make the decision, because you've got to win them over. The only way to get to the owner is to get to the vice president, and that starts with the HR director, as an example. And so when we go, and I'll talk about this later, and meet with them in person, one of the first questions we ask is, are you the one that makes final decision? But it's okay to start at this point, especially on the phone. Are you the person who makes the employee benefits decisions, or are you the person who reviews new employee benefits so that I can set up that 10-15 minute appointment? So we're looking for names. One of the first names that you may want to make note of is the gatekeeper, the person who answers the phone. Secretary, administrative assistant, whatever you want to call them, they're the person you have to go through. Sometimes I make the mistake of wanting to blow right through them when really they're the key. They're the gatekeeper. They're the key to the gate. And so if you're nice to them and maybe you make a note of their name, so in the future when you're calling about, oh, hey, Janice, I'm just calling for Bob. See how that comes off a lot nicer than, hello, can you tell me who I speak to regarding your employee benefits decisions? You see, in the conversation, the casualness, it's much better when we're using names. So we want gatekeeper names, we want assistant names, and then ultimately we want to know who that person is and making the decision. So they may say, they're not in right now. Okay, that's great. Do you know when a good time to call back is? They say, you can call back in an hour. Okay, and who is that? See, they naturally are trying not to give you names, and so you have to be subtle and clever about getting those names. So what I like to do a lot of times is I'll go reverse. I'll play the game with them. Okay, what time do they get back? Oh, when will they be in? What's a good time? And then at the very end, oh, and what's their name? And then just go silent. And a lot of times at that point, they go, oh, yeah, that's Bob. That's one of the main reasons why I go to asking about emails. So one of the other elements or pieces of data that we're looking for are email addresses, and we're learning more and more about how to use that. But one of the first things is I get names from email addresses. It's amazing how many times the gatekeeper will not give me the person's name. And I say, okay, well, a lot of times what we do to get the ball started is I'll send email a packet of information. Can I get an email address to who's responsible for making those decisions? And they'll go, oh yeah, sure, that's Susan at xyzcompany.com. I mean, it took everything I had to get the name out. She wouldn't give it to me. And then when she gives me her email, her name's right in the email address. So I love emails. I love asking for email addresses for that reason, gathering the data of getting the name. The second reason is I'm finding more and more success in my phone calls by using emails as another way to get to the client. So what I do a lot of times over the weekends is I will send out a bunch of emails, and then when I come back on Monday for my call day, then I call back and then let's say a gatekeeper secretary says, is he expecting your call? And I can say, oh, I'm following up an email that I sent out. Again, see how that just, when you call somebody up and you say, yeah, is Bob in? Yeah, Bob's in. Can I ask who's calling? Oh, yeah, this is Tony. I'm just following up an email. Totally different than, yeah, who handles your employee benefits decisions? Oh, Bob. Can I talk to him? See how that's more awkward. So, and then I'm using the emails. I have kind of like a newsletter or informational piece I send out probably about once a month, just to do an email blast. But then individually, especially if I find that I'm just having a hard time getting through on the phone. And so I will send out a personal email, and I'm getting a couple appointments, usually a week now, using those emails that I got the information from my phone calls. The other thing we're looking for is just information, right? So we're looking for things like, do they have major medical benefits? Depending on the yes or the no will dictate the way our conversation goes. Do they have non-traditional benefits? And they say, what's non-traditional benefits? And that's where, we can say something like, well, that's kind of gap insurance, supplemental insurance, or something like Aflac. That's another thing we would like to know. Are they with Aflac? If they're with Aflac, fantastic. We know they believe in benefits. We know that they like them. We know that they've already said yes. Now we just have to convince them that Colonial's better. And that's when we can start talking about how we've been around for 78 years, how we're pioneers of the industry, and how we're actually about 25% less than Aflac while providing better payouts. So that's a good thing to know. We want to know if they're a corporation, if they're an out-of-state corporation or an in-state corporation. Out-of-state's going to take a little bit more time and effort, and may not be worth your time. We may find out that they're with a union. Of course, we can work with unions. We work with unions. We work with brokers. We want to know who the broker is and what their name is. We're not really going to get into a lot of detail with that, and you may not even know what to do, but just get that information, and then we can figure out what to do with that later. We want to know how many employees they have. A lot of times I'm going to give you lists that already have like a certain number, but those lists are not accurate. There's a big difference between 8 employees and 15 employees. And the main reason behind that is the POPs programs that we can offer or not offer. We want to know if there's a better number or another place, another location that we can contact the person with. And then ultimately, we would like to know what's the best time to reach this person. And so just imagine that you've called the same place multiple times and you've never reached the decision maker. But the first time, at least you got the decision maker's name, Bob. Next time you call up is Bob. Oh, Bob's not in. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I'd like to email him some information. Okay, here's his email. Third time you call back. Oh, I left Bob an email. I was just following up with that. Oh, he's not. I'm really having a hard time contacting Bob. Do you know what a really good time to call him is? Oh, call on Wednesdays at 10. That's usually a better time. Fantastic. By the way, how many employees do you currently have? Now you're starting to build rapport. Oh, hey, Janice. Just wanted to check, by the way, real quick. Do you guys have employee benefits? Oh, you do. Oh, great. You don't. Okay. See, you keep building and adding, so every single phone call has a certain element of success. This is crucial because when you're making phone calls, you're going to feel pressure and you're going to feel failure or success based on whether or not you feel like you got a decision maker appointment. That's not the entire element of success. It's like baseball. If you're a baseball player and you get 3 hits every 10 at bats, you're a Hall of Famer. That means every 100 at bats, you fail 70 times. Well, our phone calls work the same way. When you sit down and you make, let's say, 100 phone calls, if you're not reaching decision makers, you're not going to make any DM appointments. And so when you start off, let's say week 1, and you have a brand new list and you have no names and you don't know who you're calling, that's going to be a rough day. It can take you all day just to reach 2 decision makers. So part of what we're trying to do in this process is week by week build so that when you sit down and you're making phone calls, you know exactly who you're calling, you know what time of the day, you have certain pieces of information to help you to direct those calls so that you get more DM appointments. And so you got to hang in there. It can be a little tiring. Most definitely it's tiring, but be positive, be excited. You are doing an important service. You are getting information that will be used to ultimately make those appointments. And so just keep fighting through, keep grinding, and know that you have some key buzzwords, just to lighten the mood. And we'll talk about those in some other videos. But just be relaxed when making the phone call, just like you're talking to a friend.